Today we welcome local author Regina Rossi Valentine. Thank you for joining us for our Meet the Author program offered by the Virginia Beach Public Library. Let me begin by asking you to tell us about your background and how you got started with writing.
Well, I'm not an author by trade. Certainly never expected to be penning a book myself. Um, but basically, in a nutshell, I had journaled for 20 years, written letters to my son, 22 of them. I had over 900 emails, a lot of things that I was storing away in the attic for my son to one day know the truth about everything that I had painfully tried to protect him from throughout his life as he was growing up. And all of that was for his eyes only. It wasn't intended for a book. But one day in 2016, I was riding down or driving down Princess Anne Road, and I had this very overwhelming feeling. I talk about it in the book. God doesn't speak to me in audible voices, but I felt an overwhelming feeling that there was a higher purpose for all those documents hidden away in my attic for my son one day. And I just felt like I was supposed to write a book because I had gotten to the other side. I had survived the journey and I had documented along the way. And I just felt like I needed to do this to give others a source of hope in what is seemingly a hopeless situation when you're in it. I mean, it can be just very, very traumatic. And I wanted to be able to use it to give others that source of hope and to help them. So that's kind of how
Oh.
it tumbled into my life.
Tell us about your latest book then.
So, the best way I can summarize it is a forensic psychologist who worked with my ex husband and I for quite some time on co parenting counseling said that in his entire career, my ex was the worst sociopath and narcissist he had ever met. He
Wow.
fired him. Yeah, he fired him as a patient and told me he never wanted to be alone in a room with him again. Unfortunately, I had a child with him, so I did have to continue communications with him and navigating co parenting with a child in the middle with him, at least for 18 years. Um, so the book is about that journey. And again, it's a little frightening because when I realized I was supposed to write this book and I pulled everything out of the attic, everything which was hard copies, all of it was in chronological order because I'm type A. And then I also had electronic files. So even when I pulled it together, I was like, oh dear God, I didn't realize I had done that much over 20 years. Um, so the book is about that journey. And, one of the things that I talk about is it's not written from a distorted memory. People sometimes try to write a memoir based on what they remember. They try to go back into their Rolodex in their brain. And quite honestly, I never would have been able to do that because as I was writing it, there were times when I would sit down and read a journal entry and well, many times I broke down and cried because I think out of self protection, we forget things or we lock them away because they're so painful. We don't want to remember them.
Yes.
And I would go, oh my God, I forgot that that was that bad. I mean, I completely remembered that it happened that way because I had written it down in real time, but I had forgotten in that, distance of time until I was writing the book. So it's about that journey. It's about every confrontation, every interaction, whether it be on the phone, in person, with my ex-husband, with my child there, with him not there. And again, it was because I didn't want to be that person who talked bad about my son's father to him. I didn't want to put him in the middle. I wasn't going to use him as a weapon, even though those were all the things that happened on the other side towards me because I was trying to look at the bigger picture of his life. I was trying to see that one day when he was a man and could think for himself. I'm really going to try and get through this interview without getting emotional, but I wanted him to respect me for not doing that to him. And we are on the other side, and our relationship is great. So, that's what the book is about.
All right. I understand that writing is not your primary career. What
Right.
challenges do you face with this not being the case?
I don't really face any challenges. Again, I didn't intend to write a book, and it took me 3 years. And once it was done, I was done because it was so emotionally draining. And then I kind of was just like, it's out there. God's going to direct the path. The universe is going to direct its path. And I was going to put it behind me because I have a career. I'm a professional singer. I do voiceover for radio and television. I perform in local theater and elsewhere. And so I'm very busy, but the book has now just become one more thing in my world of independent contractor because I didn't intend to sell the book myself either. Like I really, even my editor said, you should put it up on your website. People can order it from you. You can ship it. And I was like, I don't want to deal with all of that.
Mhm.
I'm glad I'm done. But the first year after it was released, I had so many strangers contact me through Facebook Messenger or come to a performance if I was doing a local show and say, I'd really like a signed copy of your book. And I was like, okay. And so I started carrying them in my car and then I would meet people at Starbucks and I thought, well, maybe I should see if I can sell this at the farmer's market. So I rented a spot for the weekend and in 2.5 days, I think I sold 17 copies. And then
Wow.
I signed up for the Apple Festival, which was a 1 day thing. And in 6 hours, I sold 13. And to me, that's a lot because you're not just walking up and buying a piece of my merchandise that as soon as you see it, you like it, you want it, you buy it, you leave. Every sale was a major interaction with someone. It was a big conversation. What's
Mhm.
your book about? Tell me more about it. And then they would ask me questions, then I would ask them questions. Well, have you experienced or do you know somebody who has experienced something like this that could benefit from this book? I actually had one gentleman at the farmers market who said, because I would stop people, do you like to read? He's like, yeah, no, I don't like to read. But what's it about? And I told him, and he goes, oh my God, that sounds like my brother. And he bought the book for his sister-in-law. So, you know, uh, I'm not gonna regularly sell it because I am so busy, but it's very fulfilling to me to see how it has taken off, from somebody who's basically a unknown author.
Yes, I have to say that has to be very affirming to see that
It is.
things are going as they are with people so interested in just the little bits that you've put it out there. So
Yeah.
congratulations to you. That's great.
Thank you.
Now, are you self-published or do you have a publisher?
So my editor and I talked about that. I am self-published, and he did help me navigate through getting it up on the platforms. And the pros and cons to that are my profit margin's a lot better being self-published. The cons are it may not reach as broad of an audience as it would with a publisher. But again, I feel like this was a calling. I'm just trying to follow the path that's let out in front of me and hope that I walk through the correct doors. Down the road, if a publisher wants to pick me up, they can. Um, but self-published for now, and it seems to be doing quite well. I'm pretty happy with it. I didn't expect to be a bestseller. Um, but quite honestly, I just and I'm actually in the red. I mean, it cost me about $18,000 just to put it to market, between editors and compilers and just all the things you have to navigate to get a book published. For me, it was a
Sure.
lot more because I did engage somebody who I thought was a ghostwriter, but we'll get into that later, I guess. So for me, I'll never make back what I put into it, and I'm okay with that. I knew that going into it. I just want to help people.
All right. How do you promote your work?
I have a website, a secure website for the book. Everybody's so used to hearing "I love you more," but my book is called "I loved you more," like past tense.
Yes.
Um, so sorry about that. So I have a secure website. From there, it takes you to Amazon. It's on Ingram Spark, and Ingram Spark is one of the largest global distributors. So it's on hundreds of platforms because of Ingram Spark. I started with Barnes and Noble, so it's out there. Social media, I've done giveaways and things on social media. A spa gift basket with my book tucked inside, and that's generated some interest as well.
All right. I think you've already answered this one, but my question to most authors who come here is where do you get ideas for your books?
That was just divine inspiration. I think a big part of that is when things come to you that way, when you feel like, somebody's, tapping on the shoulder to do something, it's about being open and receptive to that, listening to it and hoping you make the right decisions. So,
All right. Explain a little bit about your writing process.
wow. Well, when I felt the calling to do this, it actually took me about 2 years to get started. And I was 90 pages in, and that was a long and painful 90 pages because I would write some and then I'd have to shelf it because it was just draining me emotionally. I mean, my brother was visiting one Christmas and he was sitting on the couch working on his laptop, and I was at the breakfast bar working on the book. And I just started crying. He goes, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh my, I forgot this was so bad. I forgot this even happened." So it was really kind of sucking the life out of me. But every time I'd have to go back and start again, I'd have to reread what I had written so I knew where to pick off because, or pick up, because, I was dealing with journals, letters, um, legal documents, emails. I mean, 900 emails alone, but 20 plus years of journal writing. And some of those letters to my son, and the letters are letters to my son that I actually never intended to be a part of the book. But I mean, some of them were 11 pages, single space typed. Um,
Wow.
like, and I would do them on his birthday every year. So they were annual letters about
Mhm.
what transpired that year. So um, after about 90 pages, I was performing locally in a production of Mary Poppins. And the young woman who was our Mary Poppins had been on Broadway in Wicked. And we were just talking in the wings on the first night that we were in the theater getting our microphones. And she was telling me that her book was coming out, and I said, "Oh, I'm writing a book. It's so difficult." And she goes, "Oh, you need a ghostwriter." I didn't even know what a ghostwriter was. So she
Mhm.
explained it. I researched it. And through a connection on a women's art adventure retreat that I was on, I just happened to say to somebody, "Yeah, I'm looking for a ghostwriter." And she said, "Oh, my friend does that." So I vetted him, I interviewed him, and hired him. But then I flew my documents personally down to him in Florida because I've never let them out of my sight. They've been under lock and key. And I think it was overwhelming for him too how much documentation I had. And he said to me one day, he goes, "I can't even call myself your ghostwriter because you've written everything. I'm really just a compiler to pull it all together." Um, and there were a lot of great things about that business partnership, but the most frustrating was is that he was months behind on deadline, and I felt like he was putting other books before mine because mine was so difficult to do because it was so much documentation. We got finally by December, we got the beta test version out. We got it out to our readers, and I had read it before we put it out. But when you've read something so many times, sometimes, and it is your life story, you can overlook things. And when I
Sure.
read it again after it went out to beta test readers and to the Dr. Phil show and Oprah and everyone on the planet I shipped a copy to, um, I went, "Oh my God, these dates are wrong. These court rulings are wrong. How could that be wrong? Like everything's got a date on it. How did he screw that up?" So
Mhm.
I took the book back personally and fixed timelines, and then did the one thing I didn't want to do because I had hired him to do it, and that was read every single journal entry, read every single email, every single legal document. Like I didn't want to have to do that. So getting a ghostwriter compiler made me kind of go, but that's what I ended up doing. And I ended up adding 40 pages to the book myself. So I ended up being really happy with the end product. It's just that that was the process I went through. So it was difficult because he was months behind deadline. It was
Yes.
supposed to be ready for release by that Christmas, and we barely got the beta test version out by Christmas.
Ah, okay.
So
Where is this book available for purchase?
you can't purchase it on my website, ilovedyouMore.com, but it will take you to Amazon. You can also get it at Barnes and Noble, Ingram Spark. So, like if you do Apple iBooks, you can order it there because Ingram Spark is the fulfillment center for hundreds of platforms. So, really, anywhere that you like to do your reading, whether it's a book in your hand or an electronic book, it's out there for both versions. And it's funny because, not to digress, but so many people, because I do voiceover for a living, have said, "Are you going to voice your audiobook?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am." And editing takes an insane amount of hours, so I was going to pay an editor, but I've decided to just hold off on that, see how the book does again, because it's already cost me $18,000 to do it.
Yes.
Voicing it's free, but I would have to pay an editor to do that, and that's a big ticket item. So maybe down the road I might, but
All right. What is a piece of advice that you would give to an aspiring writer?
commitment, dedication. I mean, it really is about just laser focused. If you even think that you're experiencing something in your life, now that could help somebody else or would make for an interesting book, document, document, document. We really do forget. My joke now at my age now is my brain is full. I can't remember everything. Like seriously, the computer chip is almost on overload. So really, you have to document. You have to document honestly. And again, everything is my perspective. Um, and it is a commitment. You and I've talked about it. I'm type A, so it really is about getting to completion, putting 150%, 200% really into everything. But yeah, it's just dedication, commitment, and pushing forward and just making it happen.
Good advice there. At this point, would you be willing to read us an excerpt from your book?
I'd love to do that. Yes, thank you.
Great.
I gave a lot of consideration as to what I would read, and this this is actually chapter 21 called Football. Of all the traumatic experiences and things that happened with my son and I and my ex, this is one that I didn't have a distorted memory ever. It stood out so, clearly, never forgotten it. Chapter 21, Football, October through December of 2004. In October, a week before Gabriel's ninth birthday, I was attending one of his football games. For all the public scenes and bleep, crap, I'll say, we went through, this experience will always stand out in my mind. It was one of the worst for Gabriel, and I usually can't relate it without crying, but I will today. Gabriel was the quarterback. He was also the team captain. So many people there watching. His dad was coaching. During the game, a team member's father named Rick came over to me after Gabriel had thrown an interception. I can't believe he just screamed at your son for throwing that interception, he said. Hi, Rick. Sorry, who? Colby yelled at Gabriel. I'd gotten distracted in a conversation with another parent, and I missed it. Yes, Regina. He told him that if he was scared to throw the ball, he'd better tell him now, among other things. Well, I wasn't surprised, but I was upset. Then Gabriel made another error in the game, and Colby screamed at him from the sidelines. Time out! Gabriel, get over here! He was enraged, grabbing Gabe by the arm and in his face, obviously ticked off. Then he turned Gabriel around and gave him a hard shove back onto the field. Gabriel was so freaked out and scared to make a mistake that he threw another interception. Colby was livid, and that was the end of the game. When the rest of the team came off the field and went to the sidelines, Gabriel just kept walking. He was by himself, and he kept walking as far as he could. I gave him credit for not making a scene by storming off, but once he cleared the crowd, he began to cry. I went after him. He noticed me following him. Go away, he shouted. Gabriel, go away, Mom, just go away. He didn't want me to help. I didn't know what was happening. It wasn't until I hid behind the pole he was sitting under that he let me stay. I won't let anyone see me, I said. Gabriel, you were doing fine. You made a mistake, but you did not deserve to be yelled at like that. Then another father came over. Hey there, he said. You did a great job. Gabriel was crying hard by then. No, I didn't. I did terrible. Everyone just leave me alone. Concerned, I told him I would leave him for a few minutes, but I would be back to check on him. As I walked away, a few of his teammates came over to cheer him up. Then his father grabbed the bag of balls in a rage. His lips were tight and his face was puffed out and red. He went after Gabriel in a fury, but I was taking Gabe away by that point. Once we cleared the crowd, I turned on Colby. Stay away from him. Mind your own business and don't you ever walk my son off the field again. I didn't, I yelled. Your son was humiliated. You embarrassed him in front of the team and the parents. Colby kept coming. He went up to Gabriel, who was with his other teammates by then, and jabbed his finger in Gabriel's face. Don't you ever walk off the field like that again. Leave him alone, I yelled. Gabe's teammates looked scared. Colby grabbed Gabriel's arm and dragged him farther down the field, hollering back at me, mocking what Gabe had said earlier. Go away, Mom. We don't need you. Go home, Mom. Just go home. I'm not going to leave you alone with Gabriel. Then Gabriel turned around and through his tears told me to go away. I believe he thought my being there would make things worse for him. It was the most ungodly experience and it was public. I couldn't get anyone to help until finally I went over to an assistant coach. Can you please go down there and make sure my kid's okay? I asked him. If I come close to him, it makes it worse for him. My ex is so pissed right now that I just don't want to make it worse. Can you please go make sure Gabriel's okay? He agreed and he went over to Gabriel for me. Once Gabriel calmed down, about 20 minutes later, I went over to say goodnight to him since it was Colby's weekend. I kissed him, told him I loved him, and then walked to my car. Later, I reached out to that dad, the one who told me what had happened on the field, who was there when it came time to testify in court. Sorry, later, I reached out to that dad who was there when it came time to testify in court, and I meant the dad from the first encounter. He was a lawyer, but he didn't want to get involved, although he did remove his son from the team. It infuriates me because there were other people there too. I understand that people don't want to get involved. However, if any of them had done so along the way, decisions could have been made sooner for Gabriel's best interests. I believe Colby's enraged behavior made them afraid to get involved, but I'll never know. After all, if people behave that way in public, how bad is it behind closed doors?
Regina, that is so powerfully written. Wow.
Thank you. It's really hard to get through that one.
No, I bet you did beautifully. You did really well.
Thank you.
So, having read the excerpt, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, just that it's so important to me that if you're watching this and you may not be the person who has experienced this or is in the middle of it, but you know someone who is, please give this to them as a source of hope. Check it out from the library. There's one at the Central Library that I've donated. Um, I just want people to know that you can get to the other side. You need to love your child more than you hate your ex, because that pretty much is the subtitle of my book, loving my child more. And not put your kids in the middle. You can take the high road. It's difficult, but trust me, to get to the other side where I am now and to have that solid relationship with my son that I have now, even though he hated me for years, please give this book to someone who might benefit from it.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Regina. Your book is giving such an important message. I wish you all the luck with it, and it's been a
Thank you.
pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. Same here.